Hey, it's Will Hamilton. I'm the co-founder of FuzzyYellowBalls.com, and today we're going to start building your playbook. The first play we're going to add is called home base. It's one of the most powerful plays there is because it can eliminate up to 85% of your unforced errors, increase your opponent's unforced errors, and allow you to force errors and hit easy winners. We're also going to customize home base to your game. A few simple tweaks based on your strengths and weaknesses can double the effectiveness of the play. And I'm going to give you a framework for customizing your entire playbook. This works whether you're an NTRP 3-0, 3-5, 4-0, or beyond, whether you're a counterpuncher, aggressive baseliner, or serve and volleyer. Now, the goal of every play is the high ground. And if you missed the first video in this series, you should go back and check that out now because you need to understand the concept of the high ground and how it puts you in position to consistently win points if you want to get the most out of this video. There's a link either above or below this video that will take you to it. So let's talk about your playbook. Now that we understand the concept of the high ground, we need to address an absolutely devastating mistake every single player has made and most continue to make. I call it the domino effect. In the first video, I told you about how I used to obsess over technique, and I shared my story of my humiliating loss to a pusher. My friend Rick told me that people hate playing pushers because pushers play not to lose. But I think that's only half the truth. The whole truth is that if you lose to someone who's playing not to lose, that means you beat yourself. It's the worst feeling in the world. The domino effect is the reason you beat yourself. It's responsible for up to 85% of your unforced errors. It's a silent, untreated killer most players still don't know they're afflicted. Here's what happened to me against the pusher. I missed a few easy shots early in the match, and I started thinking about what I was doing. After a few games, I caught myself overthinking, and I told myself, cut it out and instead just go for it to find my rhythm and timing. Then I overhit, sprayed balls all over the place, and lost all my confidence in my shots. Finally, when I was a few games from losing and I felt the scoreboard's pressure, I got nervous, tight, and I started to push. I went from overthinking to overhitting to underhitting. It's a predictable pattern for a lot of players. After my public loss and after I had talked myself down from the ledge of quitting tennis, I made an even worse mistake. I concluded, well, I hit way too many errors. I need to work on my technique so I don't beat myself again. Here's what I've come to discover. I worked with 2011 USPTA Coach of the Year Faisal Hassan to chart 450 matches of players between the 3-0 and the 5-0 level. We found that 85% of unforced errors were not execution errors. Instead, they were decision errors. An execution error is exactly what it sounds like. You're not under any stress and you just missed a shot because you didn't execute your swing properly. But a decision error? That's where you hit the wrong shot, creating a domino effect that puts you under stress later in the point, resulting in an error. We tend to blame the last domino, the actual missed shot. But the real culprit? It's the first domino that started the chain of shots that lead to the eventual error. When you incorrectly blame your execution for the error and not your decision, you reach the wrong conclusion about what you need to do, what you need to fix to stop beating yourself. You think, oh, well, it's my technique, and not, oh, well, it's my decision making. So you obsess over your technique when you should obsess over your decision making. That is the mistake I made against the pusher, and it trapped me in tennis purgatory for years. So now that we understand the high ground, we can see exactly how the domino effect works, and more importantly, how to use plays to prevent it from ever happening again. So let's set up a cross-court backhand-to-backhand rally between hero down here and villain up here. And so this backhand rally is going to be outside ground strokes, which means again that the ball is crossing the plane of each player, basically eliminating the down the line shot for both players. So you got this rally going here, but then let's say that hero tries for this down the line shot, but doesn't quite get it. Instead, he puts it about here, and villain runs over, and these icons, there we go, yay, got it. So villain runs over, And now, again, this is the recovery point that Hero needs to get to. But the chances of Hero getting over there are going to be pretty low. So what Hero has effectively done is, instead of the high ground, and just for clarification point, the previous rally was neutral ground. Nobody had a court positioning advantage. But now Villain has got it. So it's the reverse of the high ground, what we call the low ground, where Hero now is at a disadvantage from a court positioning standpoint. Bad position for Hero, good position for Villain. And Villain now has the entire court to work with. So this is obviously now a possibility. The cross court, that's the biggest area, safest area to hit to. But the down the line is also an issue because the ball has not crossed Villain's body, so Villain can reasonably expect to hit it over here. Villain has more leverage over the ball because it's an inside ground stroke and can put it over here. So Hero has to worry about the entire court, but particularly this cross court over here. So if Villain hits it over here and then Hero scrambles to get to it, well, Villain just has to go here to safely defend. And then if Hero is unable to get the ball outside of the middle of the court, then we're still in a situation where Villain has the entire court, because again, this is an inside ground stroke now. Villain has the entire court at his disposal to work with. So Hero's going to be running back and forth, right? But and then eventually, Hero's going to be stressed, make an error, or might be so far out of position that Villain hits an easy winner. But the point here with the domino effect is this all started way earlier in the point when Hero made a bad decision to put himself in the low ground. And then it wasn't until a couple shots later that the miss actually occurred. And then people say, oh man, I missed that shot. The forehand's a little bit off. Got to go work on this thing in practice. That's not the case. Missing a shot when you're set up, that's the execution error. But the problem for Hero was he made a decision error. And with all that charting we did, 85% of mistakes could be traced back to a decision error. That's insane. But it's also, you know, it's annoying, but especially if you suffer from it right now, but it also presents this great opportunity because we can cut out our decision errors very quickly. So here's how home base works. If we get back into this backhand to backhand rally between Hero and Villain, the first rule of home base is an outside ground stroke in a cross-court rally has to go back cross-court. You just keep that thing cross-court, whether it's backhand to backhand or forehand to forehand. That's the first rule, is outside ground stroke, it just goes cross-court and you just keep hitting it back. Now, that might sound a little simplistic and you might be saying, well, Will, I'd like to, I'd like to mix things up. When do I get to change direction? Well, what happens is when you get an inside ground stroke, this is where you get to make the decision of where you go with the ball. Because remember, when it's an outside ground stroke, this area of the court really is not available to you. It's kind of a mirage, to use my friend Craig O'Shaughnessy's term. And the penalty for going down the line and not hitting a good shot is either an error wide, deep, obviously in the net, or you give away court position and you get yourself into the low ground. But when you get an inside ground stroke, let's say the ball comes back here from Villain, now this area of the court becomes available to you. Now, simply by your opponent giving you an inside ground stroke, you have the high ground because you have good position and you get the entire court, which means they instantly have bad position. So this is when you get to decide, do I keep it to the backhand or do I go over to the forehand? And then obviously that would shift your positioning to the other side of the court. This would now become available to Villain, but then you would shut off this part of the court for Villain. So you get to decide what area of the court you kind of give away and what area of the court you get to control. So now let's add customization based on your game, your strengths and weaknesses, and your opponent's strengths and weaknesses. How do you tweak plays so that they play to your strengths and play to your opponent's weaknesses? Now, there are only two things you need to figure out, and They are the concept of the sword and the shield. And this is a concept I first learned from my friend and fellow coach, Jan Ozu. So typically what you have is the forehand over here is the sword, and the backhand is the shield over here. And the same is typically true of your opponent. The sword is the forehand, and the backhand is the shield. Now, it doesn't matter if the backhand is the sword and the forehand is the shield. All you got to do is look at the court like this and figure out which side the sword is on and which side the shield is on. That's the only thing you're looking for. So is the sword on the right? Well, I guess this is the left. Is the sword on the left? Is the sword on the right? That's the only decision you're looking for, and then you can start to tweak the play based on that one read. So if we come back to home base, right now you're in this cross court outside ground stroke rally, and right now it's shield versus shield. So let's say that your opponent gives you an inside ground stroke, which is going to be your sword. Well, where would you want to go with this thing? Unless this person is wildly out of position where there's so much open court where you could hit it over here, what I would suggest is hit your sword back at this person's shield, and then because you're now going sword versus shield, I would shade over even a little bit more, because now with your strength, the down the line becomes even less likely. And when you're able to set up a situation like this, this is where you take the high ground to the next level, because now you've got sword, this is that's sort of a sword, versus shield now, right? And this is ideal, and then your shield would be over here, and then their sword would be not in the battlefield at the moment. So this is the ideal matchup you are going for. Not only do you have the high ground, because when you've shaded over, this is the inside out forehand right now, you could go down the line if you wanted to. So this part of the court is now available to you. So your opponent is in bad court position, you're in good court position, this part of the court is shut off, and your strong shot, your sword, is in control of most of the court, and you can direct your fire at the shield. This is the ultimate situation you're looking for, and when you can set this up via plays, you literally become unbeatable if you're able to do this over and over. So think of the number of ways you can win a point from this situation. First, you go over here and your opponent might just make a mistake, like an unforced error. Let's say you don't put them under a ton of stress, but they know that this is not a good situation to be in. They might try and come down the line, miss that ball, miss it in the net, whatever. This is the classic, my strength to their weakness, and they're just gonna make a mistake. So that's number one. Number two is you truly could stress them and stress their shield, and you force an error. Or number three is they hit a shot back and it's still on your sword in the middle of the court, inside ground stroke, and you hit it over here. Maybe they run and you force that error, or maybe they don't even get to it. This is an easy winner. This is not you trying to thread the needle. This is a big part of the court to hit into. Or they run over, they get it, they hit it back, it's a short ball, you move in, next ball is a put away. Also an easy winner for you. So this allows you to win points in a number of different ways, and all of them are extremely low risk and extremely high reward. If you remember back to my story where I'm talking about playing that guy as the underdog and I'm trying to go closer and closer to the lines to get the ball by him, I'm pressing harder and harder, trying to play at the upper edge of my ability, that simply doesn't work. And even if you were playing amazing, it might not work. And if you're not playing amazing, then it's certainly not going to work. But this setup, because we're leveraging the most powerful weapon there is, court positioning, it takes all the pressure off of your shots and gives you a consistent way to win matches. This is consistent in match. So every game you're going to play well and consistently. It's not going to be a situation where you play one great game and then the next game you're terrible. You break serve and then you get broken back. And you're going to be consistent over matches. If you're playing a tournament, you're going to be, play the same performance first round, second round, third round, quarters, and so on. Incredibly powerful situation. All plays, for the most part, are trying to get to this situation. All plays are trying to get you the high ground, and most of them are trying to get you to this situation where it's sword versus shield, because when, like I said, you get to this situation, you're virtually unbeatable. So now that we understand home base, let me share an epic win and an epic fail. Rodrigo writes, "Hi Will, I can't express myself to say how grateful I am to you. I have been struggling in the last few years due to lack of mental control and handling the pressure. Today, I won my first singles tournament and I easily beat my opponent 6-3, 6-1. Last match we played, he had easily beaten me 6-2, 6-1, and he is a far better ranked player. Best, Rodrigo. So the only change Rodrigo made to his entire game was running the home base play. That's how powerful this thing can be. But in full disclosure, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Mark writes, Will, on Thursday I took my 3-5 right-handed game and played a 4-0 lefty. I followed the directional instructions. He kept hitting left-handed cross-court forehands that traversed my body. I dutifully kept hitting cross-court backhands back to his forehand. I think he thought it was target practice. It was not a lot of fun from my perspective. Best regards, Mark. So this is why it's so important to have more than one play in your playbook. Not all plays are going to work against all opponents. So if we come back to this board here, let's talk about what happens when you face a lefty, or more specifically, what happens when the sword and the shield get reversed. So if we put you down here, or we put Mark down here, what we had against the lefty is that the sword is now on this side of the court and the shield is over here. And this, as you know, if you've ever played a lefty, can dramatically change how things work. So what happened to Mark was that his lefty opponent was running a play called the battering ram. Now, if you want a good example of the battering ram, let's take a look at Rafael Nadal. So there you go. That's the battering ram. Incredibly powerful play. I love it because I'm a lefty, but you don't need to be a lefty to use this play. The only read you need to make is, do you have sword cross court at the shield? And if you do, then you can use the battering ram. It's simply a situation where you hit the sword cross court at the shield into the biggest area of the court, which is why this is so effective. You have geometry working in your favor. It's no wonder that nobody can beat Rafael Nadal at the French Open. He's got his strongest shot plus geometry matched up at his opponent's weakest shot. Now, I want to come back to the high ground real quick and talk about one of the subtleties of this play, and then we will go back and you can watch Rafael Nadal do this to Gasquet. So to gain the high ground in a setup like this, what Nadal first does is he actually pushes Gasquet back. So another way you can gain the high ground is to push someone back. It's not just about side to side, it's also someone's depth in the court. So Nadal first pushes back, then he pulls wide. So now he's working both angles, depth and direction. And then he's got Gasquet completely off the court and he rips a winner. So that's how the battering ram typically works, is you actually push someone back first before you pull them wide. Other plays, you kind of move somebody side to side a little bit more. So I wanted to highlight that distinction. So now I have a question for you. What is your #1 decision error that puts you in the low ground? Please leave me a comment below and let me know. And hey, when you do, what I'm gonna do is send you the second page in your playbook, and that's gonna be the home base play. So what I'm gonna do is just send you a Facebook message when you leave a comment below, giving you all of this that we talked about in PDF form that you can print out. And I'll also include, in that first video, I gave you the first page in your playbook. I'll also include that as well in case you didn't pick it up on the last video. So we're starting to build this thing. We're starting to build out your playbook, and I'm really excited because this thing is going to transform your game. So with that said, thank you for watching this video. Look forward to reading your comments below. And in the next video, we're gonna talk about the 5 phases of the game, because every playbook needs to have plays for each of the 5 phases. And in fact, every playbook needs at least 17 plays that cover these 5 phases. And I'll explain that in more detail in the next video. Some phases of the game, you're gonna have more plays than others, but this is where you build a complete playbook, when you've got those 17 plays that cover the 5 phases. So stay tuned for that out in the next couple days. Just leave a comment below right now, and I will get you your next page in the playbook, the home base play. so you can print that thing out and put it in your playbook. So with that said, thank you for watching the video. Really enjoyed making it for you, and see you in the next video.